Hospitality New Zealand has unveiled a 5-year strategy it says will future-fit the sector for a new era, focused on things like talent, sustainability and mental health, and advocating for the sector with a new Minister for Hospitality and Tourism, Matt Ducey. Hospitality New Zealand CEO Steve Armitage joins me now. Steve, thank you for coming in.
Pleasure.
You got a new minister. What's he like? What's he said?
Well, we do have a new minister. It's the first time we've had hospitality recognised in a ministerial title. The engagement at this early stage has been really positive. We benefit from the fact that he's got some experience in hospitality. His family are well known in Christchurch hospitality circles, so he's worked in the sector. So that's played well to our members, that they're able to see a relationship to somebody who understands the world we operate in. And we think that the balance of portfolios that he has plays well to hospitality as well. There is a focus on mental health, and that's one of his passion points, and we recognise that there's a need for us to be quite purposefully focused on how we're looking after our staff in that regard. I think he's also, like many of us, and MB and other ministerial agencies, that they're trying to understand what exactly the addition of hospitality means. The tourism portfolio is obviously well established. The Minister has clear responsibility over a budget that looks after Tourism New Zealand and on the policy side with an MB. So we're looking at what does that addition of hospitality mean, and how do we ensure that that translates to some meaningful actions. And the timing of our strategy obviously provides a good hook to introduce the Minister to the areas that we think are important, what our members are telling us they want us to focus on.
Absolutely. The budget he's got for tourism would be under some stress given the austerity focus of the current government. Do you have any idea about the budget for hospitality, or is that also still a question mark?
No, we haven't discussed dollar figures. What we've tried to talk about is issues, and so we're highlighting the areas where there are some pressure points and where we're wanting to see some long-term focus. So we have a curious kind of arrangement, I suppose, with a minister that has hospitality in his title, but the levers that we need to pull sit in other areas. They sit in education, they sit in immigration, workplace relations, and so on. So really the initial role that we're looking to the minister to play for us is to be a strong advocate around the cabinet table for the issues that matter to us. And of course, over time, we'll want to see some purposeful investment that we can see specific to hospitality. But we're reasonable in our expectations at this point. It's early stages, but the early conversations bode well.
Okay, so let's talk about the strategy. This was developed even before a new Minister for Tourism and Hospitality was started anyhow, before that minister was in place. What were you trying to achieve with it?
Well, initially, when I stepped into the role around 6 months ago, we were still working through the after effects of COVID. Yeah. And the leadership at the time did an outstanding job navigating through some really difficult times. But we were needing to bring our focus back to what mattered to members and to start to look at how we reorganised our efforts in a more concerted effort. We'd become spread quite thin, and as a result, I think needed to just tighten things up. We also needed to go back to our members and get a mandate that we were focusing on the right things in the right way and delivering benefits back to them. But also we needed to think about the fact that there's a bit of a generational shift starting to take place, in my view. Hospitality has got some stalwarts that have been in and around the sector for 40 to 50 years, and they've paved the way for young up-and-comers to start to make an impression. And if you look at the ownership, and particularly in Auckland here, there's a heavy skew towards New Zealanders, and there's an increasing number of new operators coming into the market. People in their 20s and 30s who are making really successful business ventures. So we're looking at how do we make sure we're building those connections, how are we demonstrating that we're creating a community where they feel a sense of belonging, and are we thinking about the things that matter to those younger operators? So it's a little bit of a balancing act, I suppose, but there's a generational shift coming through. And as you've alluded to, with a new minister, we felt the timing of a new strategy gave us a good opportunity to demonstrate to him that we had clear views on what we needed to be focused on and some areas that we wanted to work with him and government more broadly on.
So you've got the things that sort of can be done sooner and need fixing sort of now or need attention now, and then you've got the long-term stuff. Just briefly on the short-term stuff, what can be done sort of in the short term?
Well, some of that is just sticking to our knitting. The association has been set up and has operated for over 100 years and has basically been focused on ensuring that there's a good, clear advocacy, a voice for the sector. That doesn't change. Hopefully over time with the new construct that we're working within from a government point of view, those conversations become easier, and we start to see a move towards championing the sector rather than just us having to speak from the outside in a lot of the time. There's a need for us to really focus in on how we're providing meaningful partnership membership benefits back to our broader membership base. What are the things that we need to be bringing to the table to help minimise costs? Everybody understands the current environment. Costs are high, and the need to look at your bottom line has never been more acute. So we're looking at new types of partnerships that we can bring to the table to help minimise cost wherever possible. An example of that is around utilities. So people are so immersed in the day-to-day, they're not always able to look at, are they getting the most competitive power offering? And so I thought with a new partnership that we've developed, we're now able to have a member go through an exercise where their current power usage and their charges are being scrutinised, and we're able to make sure that they're on the most competitive offering possible. And in fact, some members of our national board have been able to realise some significant savings through that. So it's a practical step that, I think in an area of focus for us, but there are more opportunities that we need to be lining up to look at how we're minimising costs.
In terms of the long term, there's a couple of things that stand out in the strategy. I was interested to see that you guys would be increasing your advocacy for big events for the city. We know that those kind of things have come under pressure from the council's own budget cuts. What are you going to do in that space?
I think there's a broader conversation around what a sustainable funding model for the visitor economy is. So if you think about tourism, you think about all the various component parts that sit in around it. Hospitality has a relationship to that. Content, as we've just seen this last weekend in Auckland, is really important. We had Pink, Pacifica, the Warriors playing the Auckland Art Fair on. There was a real vibrancy right throughout the city. We saw it the week before in Dunedin, 2 sold-out shows, almost 3/4 of that audience coming from outside of the region. Hotel rooms completely booked out, and hospitality venues throughout that region full. So it's a clear illustration of the importance of events, business and major events. We have the benefit in the not-too-distant future of seeing the NZICC, the convention centre, come online here in Auckland. We're seeing clear impact of Takina in Wellington and Te Pae in Christchurch. So we want to make sure that there's a continued pipeline of events, major and business, to stimulate the sector. So it comes back to that funding model. As you say, local government has come under a lot of pressure. They're having to be very deliberate and judicious around where they're putting ratepayer money. And that has seen some trade-offs made. And so marketing and tourism has suffered as a result of that. We're seeing less events in Auckland and up and down the country. So what we're saying is we want to ensure that type of activity is being considered in the long run, particularly as discussions around what a sustainable funding model for the visitor economy looks like start to take shape.
So what are the next steps? You've put out the strategy. It's pretty high level. There's not a lot of detail in it. So what are you going to do next?
Well, there's work plans that'll be introduced to support the strategy now, which will provide a greater level of insight to people about what it is that we're doing to support bringing the strategy to life. Our members were clear with us. They wanted a short document that gave a good, strong overview of where we're putting our efforts. And so, as I say, that now we'll be putting that into a business plan with bespoke strategies around how we're executing against the likes of building a pipeline of talent and how we're focusing on sustainability. But we're also, I'm very particular about reaching out and collaborating with others. We're building a strong rapport with Restaurant Association. There's some opportunities for us to partner with them in some areas. We don't need to be duplicating effort. Similarly with TIA around sustainability, they've done some great work in that space. So let's make sure that we're working a little bit more collaboratively right across the board and sharing knowledge and insights and not running the risk of duplicating effort and investment. I think there's also a need for us to look up and out. So, we've engaged with our counterparts in Australia and through the Pacific about how we approach issues that we have in common and how we look to, in effect, be a little bit more networked. The issues that we grapple with here and the opportunities we have in front of us are pretty similar, particularly in Australia and through the Pacific. So let's make sure that we're working a little bit more clever, if you like, right across the board and sharing those insights and experiences to broader benefit. And over time, I'd like to think that we can even look at the possibility of creating a system where talent moves throughout the region on based around seasonality to help address shortfalls that we might have around labour at any particular time.
Steve, thank you very much for coming in.
That's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To support our award-winning independent journalism, subscribe to nbr.co.nz.